Good afternoon. My name is Joe Hallman, and I'm going to be your host today for the webinar. I'm excited to have Rob Paget with me again. Rob is a staff systems engineer here at Synapse. He's really one of the key members of our solutions engineering team. He's been involved with a lot of commissioning and directly supports our customers, and he's going to share some of the knowledge that he's gained over the past few years with us today. And so first, I want to do a quick audio check. Rob, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Cool.
Good. So before we kind of jump in and get started, I want to begin by first saying thank you to everyone for joining us today. I know that everyone's busy, and so we really just want to say that we appreciate you spending some of your time with us today. A few housekeeping items. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A button. It'll either be at the top or the bottom of your screen, kind of depending on what type of device you connected with today. If you just type your question in there, we'll try to answer these as they come in. We got a couple of people, Jamie and Michael are on with us helping with some of the questions that come in during the presentation, and then any that we have left over at the end, we'll have time to take care of those. So the webinar today is about managing lights across multiple sites. Rob is going to go into some more detail about what we've learned from some larger customers that really wanted an easy way to manage their lights across all their locations. So I want to get started about kind of talking first about why is this important, and specifically why should you care? No surprise here, selling to customers, selling solutions to customers with more sites will actually help you sell more lights. So I want you guys to think of, more sites equals more lights. With a single location, things are pretty straightforward. There's a small group of lights. This could be a few dozen lights to several hundred. And there's typically someone based locally that's kind of responsible for maintaining that lighting system and the control system that manages it. An example might be like a facilities or an operations manager at like a car dealership or a distribution center, or some kind of retail shopping establishment, or it could be outsourced to a local service company. Nothing too complicated, and changes and additions are easy to make. With large organizations that have multiple sites, things can get difficult without good technology, good people, and some good processes in place. Scale across multiple sites with just about anything can be challenging without these. Think about, like adding a new menu item at like a fast food restaurant across all the sites across the US, or coordinating a price change at just a handful of sites in the state, or offering a new product or service at a store, or in our industry for lighting examples, trying to get a monthly energy report from all your retail parking lots that your company owns or helps manage, or trying to manage user access to all the different lighting control systems, or simply trying to adjust the dimming schedule at one region or another. Also identifying and documenting issues at remote locations. Fortunately, technology can help solve these kinds of problems, but only if the technology was designed with these problems in mind. If a lighting control system was designed for local management, then people that need remote access won't be interested and won't buy it. If a lighting control system is designed and built to manage a single location, then people with multiple sites, and again, with lots of lights, they won't buy it. So standalone lighting control systems that get installed across many locations can actually create more problems. We're in the business of trying to solve customer problems, not introduce new ones. So things like entering usernames and passwords over and over, and other repetitive steps and duplicate efforts are basically they're just inefficient. All right, so there's a few challenges that can surface when you've got separate standalone control systems across multiple sites. You might have schedules that could be a problem. Either they have limitations, or they're just hard to maintain or adjust. security and user account management and access is fragmented and kind of cumbersome. Think about lost passwords and new users getting set up across hundreds of sites. It can also be difficult to kind of know what's happening if alarms or reports are all kind of independent at all these different sites. Upgrades can be an issue if they're very time consuming. You can spend a lot of time if you've got a large amount of sites. So customers with more sites basically buy more lights, and customers that have more lights need better controls. So now let's turn things over and let Rob kind of go over what he can share, some examples of what customers are doing with us to address these challenges.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. You still hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good, man.
Okay. Well, again, my name is Rob Padgett from our solutions engineering team. This is our third and final webinar of the summer. The first one back in June, we did an introduction to SimplySnap. And then we had a second one in July, specifically on parking garages. So if you're interested in either of those, definitely go back, check those out. You can find them on our website by going to synapsewireless.com. Click on resources and then news and events. And about halfway down on the news and events page, there's a webinar section where you can view those. And today, like Joe said, we're going to talk through some real examples of how our multi-site outdoor customers have found value in using SimplySnap. This is connected lighting in real life situations. This isn't theory. I'm really trying to make this as practical as possible. The applications we're going to go through are split into the following 5 categories: retail property managers, national retailers, municipalities, campus environments, and auto dealerships. As I go through these customer examples, there are going to be some features that apply to multiple applications or to categories that we aren't covering in the webinar. I did try to differentiate each section enough so that when you're finished with the entire presentation, you'll have a big picture view of all the things that SimplySnap can do for those multi-site opportunities that you guys will be out pursuing. So again, really appreciate your time. I appreciate you joining us, and hopefully this information will be helpful to you. Now, before we jump into the applications, there's a couple things I want you to keep in mind. The first is wireless communication. Don't take this for granted. Not all wireless communication is the same. There are still some of the top players in our industry who have challenges doing this effectively, but it's an area we really excel at. You can see the logo on the right, "It just works." That's kind of become our motto. And one of the reasons we stand out is that we're a technology company with a core competency in wireless networking. SimplySnap, it uses its own wireless mesh networking protocol that we developed when we were founded back in 2008. All of the messaging that's on the mesh network and the mechanisms we use to discover and communicate with lights, it was designed by our team here in Huntsville, and it's specifically tuned for lighting applications. And that's how we're able to support more devices per gateway, why we have better range, and why lights respond more quickly to commands than our competitors. In these pictures, you'll actually see, this shows some of the communication paths from one of our mesh visualization tools. And these pictures are from some of our more complex outdoor applications. So you can see if we can handle these, then we can handle just about anything that you can throw at us. Now, the second thing to keep in mind is user experience. So I've tried to emphasize this in every webinar, really every chance I get to talk about SimplySnap. This is a big differentiator for us. SimplySnap is the easiest to use system on the market, and that's especially true when you're talking about managing multiple locations. I have a video here that's playing. I took this from my iPhone, and I'm going through some of the menus of our cloud management platform, SimplySnap Illuminate. And if you look at the feedback here, this is the kind of thing that we hear regularly. Our design process, our Scrum teams, we incorporate real user feedback. We bring customers into our design sprints. We prototype out new designs before we even start writing any code. We use that scaled agile methodology that companies like Apple and Google use. We have a crazy smart software team. They're fanatical about user experience. And I do think this is, again, a big distinction for us in our industry. Now, throughout this presentation, I'm trying to highlight our user interface. I'm using screenshots and videos of real customers as much as I can. Some of the videos may be a little choppy because I'm streaming this over Zoom, so hopefully it comes through. But in person, the interface is completely smooth and very responsive. All right, so let's start the application discussion by talking about retail property management, sometimes called real estate investment trusts or REITs. Over the past year, I got to work with one of these REITs closely as they went through the decision-making process and ultimately chose SimplySnap for their properties. Now, this particular REIT, they own several hundred shopping centers around the US, and these are grocery store anchored shopping centers that they started an LED retrofit on back in 2015, and they completed all of their stores, the retrofit, in 2018. But they did not go with controls at that time. So they're still using that circuit-based contactors to turn power on and off to their parking lots. They did choose a fixture with a 7-pin NEMA socket on it so that down the road they could add controls. So why was a centrally managed system for all of their properties important to them? The property owners, they have a third party that manages all of these shopping centers remotely. So they're doing configuration and monitoring of the exterior energy resources for each of the properties. And in order for that third party to manage the sites, the control system they chose had to provide them access from anywhere, which, from what I've seen, most of our competitors in our space, they offer some form of remote management. But what really stood out with SimplySnap to them was the built-in multi-site management tools that enabled that third party to quickly and easily get into the site, control the lights, update the schedule, troubleshoot any alarms or fault detections from anywhere in the US. And it also gives them the ability to manage their own account credentials. Joe mentioned this earlier. If one of their 11 users, they've got 11 users in the system. If they forget their password, they can reset it. It's very easy to add and remove users, and that scales across all of the sites from one place. The other thing that was important for that third-party management company was the ability to integrate into their existing property management dashboard. They have a custom Tritium Niagara-based management platform, which you can see here in this picture, that they use to monitor things like irrigation. They're checking for circuit faults, power outages. They're controlling those contactors in the parking lots. And they already have this management dashboard that they've invested in. So it was important to them that they could bring that control and monitoring capability that's in SimplySnap into that existing Tritium system, which they are able to do using our API. Now, the owners of these properties, they're always trying to reduce their common area energy expenses. So that's money that they're saving that can be repurposed into other property improvements. And the tenants in each of these shopping centers, they're responsible for their interior energy usage, but the REIT, they pay for the exterior spaces and the common areas. Now, this particular REIT, they also had a corporate carbon reduction initiative where they were trying to meet a sustainability goal of a 10% carbon reduction. And by having all of their sites managed by SimplySnap, they're able to use the energy data from our system in the cloud to show that they are meeting those corporate initiatives. And they're also able to use that data to optimize the performance of the lighting controls for further energy savings, which I'm going to show you here in a second how they did that. Now, this customer, they meticulously track their monthly energy data. So because they did that LED retrofit a couple of years ago, their last site was back in 2018. They have at least 2 years worth of monthly energy bills at every one of their sites. So that means they know exactly how much energy they are going to save from the controls retrofit, which is like gold for us as a controls company. If you take a look at the graph here, you can see this is the data, the monthly data from their bills. This is just from one site. And you can see the blue and orange lines, that represents the last 2 years of that monthly energy bill. So that's that during that 2-year period, they're just turning so that they have LED lights, they're just turning them on at 100% at sunset, and they're turning them off at sunrise. So there's no occupancy sensors, no dimming whatsoever, just on and off. So that's their monthly usage. Now, SimplySnap, that was installed in December of last year, where you can see our little logo. And then, so in 2020, here's their monthly bill. That's where the gray line starts. So after our controls were installed. And that shows that on average, they're getting an additional 30% in savings below that on-off baseline. Now, they track their bills at all their sites. I've got a few more examples of the data. They provided me some from 5 of the other sites, which you can see in that chart below at the bottom, which shows that they're getting those same levels of energy savings at other sites as well. So that's money saved that goes right back into the properties, which really adds up if you consider those savings across hundreds of locations. Now, actually, let me back up here. The yellow line, so that's actually energy data that they're getting from our centrally managed system. So we're storing that data in the cloud for up to 5 years. They used the power export feature, you can see with the circle there in SimplySnap Illuminate, to get the data that they used for that chart. And by comparing their monthly energy bill and the energy data from SimplySnap, they're able to determine exactly what percentage the parking lot lighting is of their total common area energy expenses. Now, initially, not all of the properties started at that 30% energy savings. We did an experiment with the customer over 4 days a couple of months ago with that third-party property manager I mentioned earlier. And we're using the data from our centrally managed system to see how much changing some of the configuration on the controls would affect the energy savings. So if you look at day one of our, so again, this was a 4-day test. So day one, that's the blue line at the top. And that is with us just turning the lights on at sunset, we're turning the lights off at sunrise. So that mimics that circuit-based contactor control that they were using prior to the controls retrofit. For day two, that's the orange line. We turned on the occupancy sensors at 11 p.m. And that basically means that when the poles detected occupancy, they would go to 100% dimming. And when they detected vacancy, they went to 30% dimming. For day three, which is the gray line, we changed the occupancy dimming level to 60% instead of 100%. The difference in that amount of light output between 100 and 60% really isn't that significant, but they were able to get an additional 13% of energy savings if you look at the chart below. And then for day four, the last one in yellow, we changed the astronomical schedule to turn the lights on at dusk rather than sunset. And then we turn the lights off at dawn rather than sunrise. So with all of these changes combined, we were able to get 31% energy savings above the baseline for that particular site. And because, again, back to that centrally managed system, because they're using SimplySnap Illuminate, all these sites are connected together, it was very easy for that third party to then take those changes that we figured out were the most optimal and then apply those to all of the other sites. If you look at the power graph in the upper right, that's also from our system. That shows the energy usage overnight from one of those sites. So lights are on during the business hours, and then after the business is closed, they switch to occupancy and the energy usage drops. Theft prevention, this is a big deal for retail property managers as well. This customer had done some research and discovered that by ramping the dimming level up and down for each pole during those overnight hours, it gives the impression that you're being watched. At dusk, when the businesses are still open, those lights come on at full brightness. But then at 11 p.m., everything's closed, the lights switch into occupancy mode. Each individual pole then will ramp up to its high dimming level when it detects occupancy. And that kind of gives the impression that that car or pedestrian is being tracked through the parking lot. It also gets you the best energy performance out of the system as well. Now, I'm gonna show you a quick little video. If you see in this example, this is me. I've got my iPhone on top of my car, and I'm shooting a video while we're in this occupancy mode, and there's gonna be a car that's gonna drive right under this pole that's closest to me. So you'll see this pole will go up to its full dimming, and none of the other poles around will be affected. So let me hit play and see how well this streams for y'all. Okay, there it goes up to its high level. And just because we're streaming over Zoom, I'm gonna do this one more time. So we're at the low dimming level, and then it cars detected goes to its high dimming level. So this is all configurable in software. Some customers, they may want to do individual pole dimming like this, and others may want larger zones to expand that occupancy coverage, which you'll see in some of the upcoming examples. Whenever you have a lighting control system connected to a network, you may have customers who have questions about security. We went through a complete cybersecurity audit with this customer that's managing all these shopping center properties that we had to pass before they would deploy our system. We actually have a cybersecurity team at Synapse that works through these audits with our customers. So if you have a customer you're working with and this becomes a need, definitely let us know and we can work with them on it. You can see from the comment here in this slide, this customer was very happy with how well that process went. All right, so let's go on to the next application. Let's talk about national retailers or national enterprise accounts. Now, one thing many of them have in common with the REIT from the previous example is that they want visibility into all of their building resources from one system. Oftentimes, these retailers, they have either their own building management system or have worked with a third party on a highly custom solution. The retailer in my example here, in terms of point of sale, security, interior lighting, refrigeration, their entire infrastructure is built into this management platform that they designed from the ground up. But one thing they didn't have under their control was their parking lot lighting and their signage. So they were really motivated to bring those pieces into their management platform. They actually struggled with this for a couple of years. They did pilots with other vendors, but ultimately those fell flat because they couldn't get the controls to integrate with their management platform. We were able to be successful where those others weren't due to our BACnet integration capabilities. Their centrally managed building management software that's back at their headquarters that they had built, it's talking to each of the gateways at the 750 stores that we've done so far over BACnet IP. The schedule actually resides in that master system. It's controlling all the sites, and that master system just applies the scenes that they want to use at certain times of day, which you'll see from the screenshot of SimplySnap on the right. That shows some of the scenes that they're using. And that gives them the flexibility of changing the operation of the lights at all of their stores based on a holiday schedule or shortened or extended hours without having to coordinate anything with the local stores. Now, we've worked with other large customers to integrate into their existing building automation systems over BACnet and Modbus. And again, another big differentiator for us. So definitely keep that in mind when you're meeting with these customers. I'll also say this about that integration, that BACnet piece, it's more than just a checkbox. The setup on our side is very easy. It just takes a few minutes to set up. I've gotten feedback from engineers at Train and at Delta Controls about how easy it is for our system to integrate into theirs. I mentioned that flexibility of the occupancy zoning in the first example. This retailer has their parking lots split into two zones. They've got one for their employees and then one for their customers. The employee parking is set up to bring all of the lights in that zone to its configured high dimming level if any of the poles in that zone detect occupancy. But for their guest parking lot, they have it set up more like our first customer, where each individual pole goes to its configured high dimming level whenever that pole detects occupancy. So this gives them the kind of flexibility that you can only get from a network-based lighting control system. The customer is also using their building management system back at their headquarters to poll SimplySnap for power data in order to detect faults at the circuit level, the node level, and the driver level. And for customers that don't have those complex building management systems in place to detect those kinds of things, we do have built-in fault detection in SimplySnap, which I'll talk about more in the next section. Some multi-site customers may only have 5 or 10 locations. Others may have hundreds, like the customer in this picture, or they may have thousands. And it's one thing to have all the right features and functionality for the lighting controls that a customer wants, but it's a whole other beast to have a services team in place that can coordinate the configuration, the testing of projects that involve agents, distributors, electricians, and end users. All of the commissioning and project management for this retail customer is handled by our team in Huntsville, which you can see from the picture on the bottom right. That's our services team, all working from home over Zoom, like most people. Our system was designed to be managed remotely, and which is really what enables us to do all of the commissioning for these sites remotely. We're not going on site to do any of this. We started setting these sites up in the fall of 2018, about 2 years ago. And from then until now, we've completed 771 stores. By the end of this year, we'll actually have over 1,000. I think those numbers are pretty incredible if you think about all the coordination that has to take place in order to have success at that kind of scale. We average about 50 sites a month for this customer. And the reason we only average 50 a month isn't because we're the bottleneck. They can only handle so many installations a month. Hopefully this kind of gives you an idea of an example of the kinds of resources we have at Synapse, both from a human standpoint and a technical standpoint, to be able to meet the needs of projects of any size. Now, I mentioned this customer wanted to bring everything under the control of their centrally managed system, and that includes their signage. So they have signs on their building and in the front of the shopping centers that they want controlled by their building automation system. And they're using one of our products to control the circuits that go to those signs. So as you can see from the photo, sometimes those signs could be located several hundred feet away from the store, but because of that SimplySnap mesh and the range of our controllers, it's not a problem for us to bring those under the control of our system and then ultimately into their building automation system. All right, municipality. So they're a good fit for a centrally managed multi-gateway system that's spread out over many square miles. We've seen a wide variety of projects, some with roadways in smaller cities, but more typically in city parks and entertainment districts, downtown areas as well, city parking lots, parking garages. Municipalities typically like to manage everything from a single user interface. The people that we've talked to that are using our system, they really enjoy using it. And it's a pretty diverse group of people in the organization that are using SimplySnap. It's IT managers, operations, facilities, you've got even city electricians. And because it's easy to use, centrally managed, they can get to it from anywhere to quickly control the lights and make changes to the system or troubleshoot any problems. Most municipalities are going to want to start small. They only have a certain budget allotted each year, so they may only want to do one park or one block of a downtown at a time. The example in the picture on the upper left, they started with one area of the city and now they have 4, and they're using SimplySnap Illuminate to remotely manage each of their gateways. Same with the one on the right, started with a couple of city streets and expanded to a police station, a roundabout, and a service center, all centrally managed through SimplySnap. And then the bottom one, they have a combination of parks, streets. They're even controlling things like door locks, and some of the trees in their entertainment districts, they have rope lights that they're controlling through our system. On the scalability side, it's easy to add more lights to an existing site. Once it gets installed, it makes those connected lighting projects, like Joe mentioned, it more sticky. So they want to keep adding to it. So it gives you the opportunity to keep selling more lights to the customer over the course of several years. Now, some of these downtown areas have very dynamic RF environments. And this is where, again, our 13 years of wireless mesh networking comes into play. There's a lot of trees, you've got trucks moving around, making deliveries, lights wrapping around all the buildings. Like you see in the example on the right, we really excel at these challenging RF environments because of the way our mesh was designed. Traditionally, when there's a problem with a light in a city, excuse me, you either have to wait for someone to report it, or you have to send someone around, driving around, looking for problematic lights. So obviously, these types of customers, they want to get these lights fixed as quickly as possible because of the safety risk. SimplySnap has that real-time architecture that we've talked about in past webinars, where we're regularly polling our controllers to ensure that we can communicate. We're making sure the poles are actually powered up. We're getting power data from the drivers, and we're able to use that power data to detect faults with the lights. So SimplySnap can send you an email with the identification of the light and the type of fault experienced, which you can see an example of that here on the right. I've got an email that came to my phone from a light that wasn't drawing as much power as it was supposed to. It's an actual problematic light out in the field. So this allows our customers to be more proactive with their maintenance versus reactive. Now, smart city integration, there's still a lot of people trying to figure this out. We're not trying to make the claim that we are the smart city solution. We're focused on controlling and monitoring lights and sensors. We can, however, communicate and integrate with cloud-based smart city platforms like the 2 on the right here in this picture. We've done integration with, and because of that way, the SimplySnap is built on top of APIs, like I mentioned in our first example. So you can programmatically integrate it in with higher level systems. Now, the city doesn't have to manage their lighting control. Within that smart city platform, they could still use our standalone system, like you have here an example on the left where they're just using SimplySnap. So we've got options for both. Campus environment. So this would include college campuses as well as enterprise or business campuses, even hospitals. A few of the things they have in common, oftentimes they're multi-site, where they might have multiple locations spread out over a city or a region. Also, typically they're doing more than just parking lots. So they may have pathways and roadways, parking garages. If it's a college campus, they may have gymnasiums or outdoor stadiums they want to control. If it's for businesses, they may have indoor warehousing or manufacturing. If you think about it, they're kind of like these mini municipalities, which is where a centrally managed scalable system like SimplySnap that could control all of those things becomes really valuable. In the pictures above, this is a campus that's using SimplySnap to remotely manage parking lots across 2 different campuses. They've also got a gymnasium and a football field. And the example on the bottom, there's some roadway and parking lot lights for buildings and larger parking lots as well as residential areas. When customers like campus environments are doing these large mixed use projects where they're putting new lights in, they may have some combination of retrofit and new installation. For a lot of you attending this webinar, your OEM already has an integrated option where our controllers are installed at the factory. For retrofits, there's more room for error since the wiring is done at the site by the electrical contractor. Using the 7-pin NEMA socket controller like one of our twist locks, it does make this easier, but there may have been pre-existing problems with lights or motion sensors in those fixtures prior to them putting the controls in. And because we're connected directly to our controller is connecting to power, it's connecting to the motion sensor, it's talking to the driver. During commissioning, we can use the data from our system to determine if a light isn't dimming properly or if a motion sensor isn't transitioning. And this ensures that while you've got the electricians on site working on a project, before they've signed off on everything, they can go and address those problems. I've got a great example of this from these pictures from a commissioning project I worked on late last year. Both of these are 2 different customer sites. They have 3 different drivers in each of the lights. And you can see on the left picture, one of the drivers is out. And it's not super easy to catch that visually, especially during the day. From a remote location, without me having set foot on the site, I was able to provide the electrician with a punch list of problems that they needed to go investigate. And in this case, one of the drivers had failed. So it was still under warranty. They were able to get a replacement from the manufacturer. The one on the right, I'm trying to dim the light here, and you can see that one of those drivers is still stuck on. So it's not actually dimming the light to its low dimming level. So when I had the electrician check that out, he found out that there was a dimming wire that had come loose from the driver. So he was able to fix that one right on the spot, just connect the wire up, and then we were off and running. Both of those issues were there probably for some time prior to putting controls in, but there was no way to detect them without someone reporting that problem. In my experience with these campus environments, there are usually some pretty non-technical users involved in the management of the system. If it's multi-site, you've got even more people involved. In most cases, after the commissioning, a customer won't have to touch the system, but if they do need to make a change, as long as they know how to use a smartphone, they can use SimplySnap. I'm one of the users of the system. I use it all the time. Over the past week in getting screenshots for this webinar, I've been using it very heavily. It's just as intuitive and helpful for a power user like myself as it is for a non-technical user. They're really going to enjoy using it, and they'll be able to make changes to the system themselves without having to call us. Though, if they do want to call us and they need help, we're here to help them as well. Okay, our last application, multi-site, that we're going to talk about would be auto dealerships. There are a significant number of auto dealerships out there where the owners own multiple locations. The customer in this example has 10 different dealerships spread throughout their region. One of the reasons they wanted their sites connected together was so that they could manage a unified schedule. They wanted to keep all of their lights on at 100% dimming later into the evening, and sometimes even turning them on during the day anytime they had a big sale. So they have a maintenance group that maintains the schedule for all of those dealerships. And that group is able to remotely access SimplySnap and make changes to the schedule without having to do any local coordination. Now, most auto dealerships have different lighting needs than a standard campus or retail parking lot. They want as much light as they can on the new cars, which are positioned to the front of the parking lot. In the back or near the service bays, they may want to use different dimming options or occupancy sensors for energy savings and security. And our network-based lighting controls makes it easy to set those zones up to behave in any way the customer needs. And the zones are flexible. So if they're repositioning their cars in the parking lot over time, the zones can change along with however they're setting that lot up. Last thing that comes up with auto dealerships is the ability to turn lights on a cloudy day or when a storm comes through. And this really applies to most customers that are doing outdoor parking lots. SimplySnap allows you to use a combination of that astronomical schedule, the dawn, dusk, sunrise, sunset, and daylight control so that you can bring the lights on at any time of the day when the light level drops below that configured foot candle level. This really doesn't have anything to do with like a connected system. This, you can be standalone or connected online, but I did want to mention it as I know this is a capability that does come up from some of our customers. Well, there you have it. Everything you need to know about SimplySnap for outdoor, centrally managed, multi-site customers. That's a mouthful to say. Before I hand it back over to Joe to wrap up, let me give you a brief overview of some of the components of our system. Go back and watch that first webinar. If you want more, I do cover it in more detail there. But in every SimplySnap installation, you have at least one gateway and some number of lights, right? In this picture, this is our central base station, which is our outdoor rated gateway. It's in an EMA box, has a 5-button switch for manual control. Then you've got, lights. In this case, these are just showing an example of what an embedded light might look like. And then you've got the user interface, which is web-based, and you don't need any special device. It works on anything from smartphone, tablet, desktop, really whatever the customer has that has a browser on it. A picture on the left shows an example of one of our controllers that is used in some of our embedded options with our fixture OEMs, where they're installing that in the light at the factory. For LED retrofits, if embedded is not an option for you, we have our IP65 rated controller. That's our DIM10 220 that you could put in the pole, or you can mount it to the half-edge nipple connector on the fixture. And then lastly, this is our twist lock controller. That's a 277 40 volt version, has a built-in photocell, and it can integrate in with a motion sensor that's already in the fixture, and it fits in a standard 7-pin NEMA socket. And then lastly, on the left, this is our BMS gateway. This is what enables us to communicate with those higher level BACnet and Modbus building management systems. And then on the right, that's our wireless occupancy and daylight combo sensor, the WSN DPM. It's a great way to add occupancy coverage to an area where a fixture-based occupancy sensor might not be able to cover. It also is great for those Title 24 daylight harvesting applications for parking garages or indoor warehouses. So that's all I've got. Thanks again for your time. I'll hand back to Joe to wrap up.
All right, thanks, Rob. All right, so here's a quick recap. The SimplySnap system, control system can be used to manage a single location. It has an easy to understand, easy to use interface, and it's built with a flexible architecture using the latest technology. Or it can be used to manage multiple locations securely. It can also provide local or remote access, and it offers, several different integration options, as Rob showed you. The cloud software that enables this, management of multiple sites and remote access is called SimplySnap Illuminate, and it is an option, that's sold separately. So we have lots of customers that are single site installations that are perfectly fine with just a standalone system. But we are having a lot of success with customers that are deploying controls across multiple sites with this solution. So let's talk about kind of next steps. I guess the first thing to do is to start talking to your customers that have multiple locations and multiple sites, and find out which fixtures, that you're already selling that include an option for Synapse controls. Now, this might be an embedded option that's just a part number option to include the Synapse controller, or like Rob said, certain fixtures may not have an embedded option, but they certainly have external controls, whether that's a twist lock or the bolt-on. Be sure to quote the necessary number of gateways, and if you are interested in the cloud option, then again, that software is optional. And the integration needs, like Rob mentioned, that's been a huge win for us, and we've got lots of options there. So be sure to ask customers if they have existing systems that they would like to integrate with. And then last but not least, choose the level of commissioning that's needed. We've got a great team that can do lots of different kinds of support and commissioning. So with that, if you've got questions about what specific products are available for quoting, these applications or commissioning services, or any other questions you've got about a project you're working on, please contact your fixture manufacturer sales team or your local distributor and ask them how you can get Synapse controls included in your next project. And if you're not sure who to work with, you can also contact us. We'll be sure to connect you to the right people and help get the next job quoted correctly. So that's it. And I think that does it for the presentation. We ran a little bit over today. Apologize for that, but we do appreciate everyone sticking with us. So we'll take some questions. And I know we've had a couple come in. And if you guys will use the Q&A, we'll answer as many of those as we have time for. Rob, I'm going to ask you this first one that I saw earlier pop in. Basically, it said, what options do you have for adding motion sensors to your systems? I think you kind of covered it a little bit. Maybe you could recap that just to make sure we answer.
Yeah, I mean, most of our controllers have a sensor input where they can connect into, many of the top motion sensor brands out there we can work with. And so we can actually power the sensor from our controller and then read, the occupancy or vacancy output from the controller into our system, or from the motion sensor into our controller. The twist lock has that capability. The integrated controllers, the one I showed in the picture, the 08706, it has that, the DIM10 220. So pretty much all the controllers that we're selling nowadays have some ability to integrate. And then that remote one that I showed the picture of, the wireless one, that's a great one if you want to put occupancy in a spot where there's, the coverage pattern for a motion sensor, isn't as great as the light pattern is from a light. So if you've got a spot in like those retail applications where you want to put an occupancy sensor on a building, so if someone's walking out of a shop, you want to try to catch them earlier than waiting on the pole in the parking lot to detect them, you can use that wireless sensor and stick it, just power it, mount it right on the outside wall of the building, and you can put it in a zone that controls the lot. It'll turn that lot on and off. So hopefully that answers your question. So I had another one. I'll take this one. This is a question about a 480 volt twist lock and availability. Basically, that is in beta currently. We're expecting, I guess, the release of that's probably going to be, I would say, October timeframe, just depending on supply chain and ramping up inventory and things. So expect to be shipping mid-October. So let's see if there's any other questions. I know we're like a minute away from our 45-minute cutoff. There's a question that came in about a Zaga connector. I think Jamie had kind of answered that. The question about the two systems, did we get that? There was I'll mention this real quick. If you have an indoor and outdoor system, really doesn't, if you have multiple outdoor or multiple indoor, in any combination of that with Illuminate, which is what the Joe showed you, they can all be brought in and managed together. So you can have a unified schedule from one place, scenes, all of that. The cloud knows, if you're setting up a scene, it knows which zones are associated with an indoor and the outdoor application. So it determines, where to push the schedules down to the gateways. So that's kind of the beauty of this system. We haven't talked about indoor warehouse or high bays, which I think we're going to do another webinar on that. That's our next one. But we can do the parking lot and the indoor all from one place through Illuminate.
Okay. All right. So this was a follow-on question about, will this webinar be posted and presented? We'll do it like we did the other ones. We'll basically send out a link and an email next week with a link to go and watch the recorded or to share the recording. So with that, we'll close it out. I certainly appreciate everyone joining us, and we look forward to doing more of these in the future. And let us know if we can help you with any of the projects that you're working on. And thank you for your business, and we will talk to you guys later.